যদি সবাই ফিরে যায়, ওরে ওরে ও ভাগা সবাই ফিরে যায়, যদি গহন পথে যাওয়ার কালে কেউ ফিরে না যায়, তবে পথের কাটা তুই রক্ত মাখা চরণ তলে একলা দলরে, তুই রক্ত মাখা চরণ তলে একলা দলরে, যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে। যদি আলো না ধরে, ওরে ওরে ও ভাগা আলো না ধরে, যদি ঝড় বাদলে আধার রাতে দুয়ার দেয় ঘরে, তবে বজ্রানলে আপন বুকের পাঁজর জ্বালিয়ে নিয়ে একলা চলো রে, আপন বুকের পাঁজর জ্বালিয়ে নিয়ে একলা চলো রে, যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে। একলা চলো, একলা চলো, একলা চলো, একলা চলো রে।
Hi guys, thank you for joining the live stream. I hope the audio is coming fine, right? Yeah, it is. Wait a moment. So, something very fascinating just happened. I got back home from the High Court just a little while back, and I was about to announce a live stream discussing Max Weber's book again. Right then, I just stumbled upon a random interview. Okay, I don't know who the man is. I looked him up on Wikipedia, and I didn't know all that much about the channel from which the interview has been uploaded. Okay, so it's hosted by Frontline magazine. So I had heard of Frontline Hindu. So I looked up whether it's that Frontline only. Then I found out, no, the reason I was interested to find out the backgrounds of this person as well as the YouTube channel was because they were saying things, at least in the first 5-6 minutes, things mostly that I agree with. So I got curious. Who is this? Why haven't I ever heard of him, etc.? Then I was astonished to find out that, wait, it's from the Hindu. Frontline magazine is the Hindu, Frontline Hindu only. Then the name of the video is called BJP is no longer denying caste, it is managing it politically. I thought that's kind of a value neutral comment to make. Let's see who this guy is. Then I found out he's a Dalit scholar, MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, and has used to be an engineer. I think he studied engineering before that and then became a management guy and has written many books on caste even. So that was also a very fresh perspective. Then I found out he's actually a Modi critic from 2010 onwards. That's what Wikipedia said, at least. That was also very fascinating. So how is this Modi critic saying things about caste, things that we agree with? And also someone who is not from social science, from a social science background. He's from a management background. This is more weird because when usually people come from the management backgrounds and talk about social science, they just make up stuff. The most evil things happened only in Hinduism, or no evil ever happened in India in the last 5,000 years. Caste was made up by British, or caste was made up when Raja Ram Mohan Roy became a British stooge, etc. Random stuff. He was saying none of that. So this person is called Anand Teltumbde, Marathi, I guess. So he is going on saying, I've listened to it right now about for the first 14-15 minutes. He's going on saying things that we repeatedly discuss from this channel. Okay, almost exact same talking points, calling caste a status, etc. So this is going to be a very fascinating watch and a very fascinating discussion, guys. What happened today at the court? Nothing. बहुत पीछे नंबर है. अभी मैं लॉयर्स फीस देते रहूंगा और उठेगा भी नहीं मेरा केस, लग रहा है. कल भी नहीं उठेगा, आई थिंक. Probably day after tomorrow. From Hindu 2.0 to the Hindu 2.0, pretty much. Mayuresh is saying he's the proper archetype of what a good Indian student does. BTech, MBA, public service. Acha, is he in public service? That being said, Teltumbde is an accomplished man and one of the brighter ones among that particular discourse, and is well accomplished as well. I see. So what else are his backgrounds? Like, is he a far left commie and stuff? Does he hate everything about India, Hinduism, BJP, all of that kind of stuff? Does he burn Manusmriti, etc.? Aditya is saying lawyers are gonna milk. No, this is not the fault of the lawyers. तो केस उस नंबर पे आ गया, अब क्या करें? Varanasi and Bahubali animated. Yes. Varanasi is तो just AI generated motion posters. बट अच्छा है कि फिल्म का स्कोप समझ में आ गया है कि क्या क्या होने वाला है, वो थोड़ा एक वाइब दिया गया है. बाहुबली एनिमेशन तो छोड़ दो भाई. It is the best animation I've ever seen. And when it releases, it will be historic. It will change India's course in the entertainment industry forever, because that will be the standard. But more importantly, I found out that people were going on saying that, oh, it's just like Arcane. The animation is just like the animation series called Arcane on Netflix. The same guys worked on it. Although it's not just the entire team that worked on Arcane who worked on Bahubali. But still, yes, there were Indian animators as well, and there were the guys who did Arcane as well. So I got to watching Arcane. Arcane is pretty good. I have seen up till the 3rd or 4th episode now. But the point is, Bahubali Eternal War is hands down better than Arcane. So as for Varanasi, let's see when more stuff releases, then we will discuss. Maharashtra SC is mostly neo-Buddhist. Watching it from office now. Nice. Gemini says this guy is a Maoist leader. What the? He was working with BPCL, but yes, he's known for advocating Marxism into the whole Dalit Pride movement. Like, bro, he's probably gawai, but 10x smarter. But अच्छा, क्या अजीब views hai. Such a view-rich country. This is why Shashi Tharoor said no. Okay, there's probably no ideology in the entire world, no view in the entire world that's not followed or believed in by someone in India. What a weird person then. If he is like those people, then I would expect him to spout a lot more of lies and hateful things. Although, to be fair, I've only listened to about 15-16 minutes. For the first 15 minutes, I agree with pretty much everything he says. That's the kind of things we say from this channel repeatedly every day we have been saying for the last 1.5 and 2 years. Okay, let's start the video now. Let's start the interview.
Hello and welcome to the Frontline Conversation.
Wait, my headphones are turned down.
Today we are joined by Anand Teltumbde, India's leading public intellectual and author. After Modi government declared caste enumeration in caste census, Anand wrote a piece in Frontline which sent waves in India. He argued that
Wait, what was the piece?
wrote a piece in
A surgical strike on India. Okay. Mayuresh is saying, and somehow he thinks Hindutva has a neoliberal stick to it. It does, to some extent. And he's married to somebody related to B.R. Ambedkar. So there's that. The whole discourse is pretty negative, though. BAMC. What is BAMCF, though? Okay, let's see.
Frontline which sent waves in India. He argued that this caste census is going to be a difficult process for India, which could create more rifts in society.
It could, yes.
After that, Anand wrote a book, which is here, The Caste Consensus, which is going to be published now. And I urge every reader and viewer to read this book to understand the depth and history of the caste census. Sir, welcome to Frontline. Let me start with the first question. That caste census.
Let me interest you further in the video by giving out a spoiler. From what I've understood from watching this interview for the first 15 minutes is that he is basically, at least for the first 15 minutes, is criticizing the caste census plans of the government, BJP or Congress, whoever does it, because according to him, it will have the same negative repercussions on society that the British caste census did, which every right-winger also says and agrees that it some people say that created caste system or casteism for the first time, and the sane ones say that it solidified and rigidified an evolving, malleable situation, whatever the degree of oppression in that situation. But he doesn't want caste census to happen, so that the British caste census, like bad negative consequences, don't happen. Once again, that's a pretty interesting view to have.
Which is being pursued as a progressive politics, something which will take India progressive forward. You are arguing that this could be another one step back process. So please explain why you are saying this.
Yes, the present discourse is making caste census as a very progressive step, progressive politics rather, and many people have come in support of it. My skepticism, let me tell you, I'm a data person, so it would be paradoxical that I would be opposing caste census as such. Any data are welcome because data are the raw material for data science and people like us. So we do not detest data as such, okay? But I'm skeptical about the politics of the caste census, okay? Mainly on three grounds. Firstly, it betrays some kind of deep ignorance about caste in people who just superficially support it. The principle,
Very interesting. He's criticizing the people who do support the caste census and saying that they don't understand caste, which is what we also agree with and have been saying from this channel repeatedly, that leftists and right wingers, most people don't really understand caste.
I would oppose it on firstly the principle, the knowledge about the caste. See, caste is not something like a finite entity with a definitive boundaries, etc., to be measured. That
So well said, Deepankar Gupta's main argument.
defies the measurement. Despite colonial rulers having made it a fixed kind of entity and rigidified caste, it still has a capacity within to mutate. Okay, and
Right.
as a result, it actually becomes difficult. The example is that earlier times somebody said that 4,000 castes or something like that, but now the caste number actually defies. The SCCC survey of 2011 pointed out something like 4.6 million castes. Okay, some people would fault it on a methodology, but I would say that it might be actually reflecting a truth of caste. Okay,
Yeah,
so that is first kind of reason that why I'm skeptical about. Second thing, supposing you take a very pragmatic view because something needs to be done in politics and count caste. Okay, so it brings in the question of methodology. The methodology, how you list out caste, how you aggregate caste, and how you validate caste. It is not a neutral process. It is very politically laden process. Okay, because it brings in all kinds of political relationship in it. The way the people are in power and the way they would look at it. So
very well said. Political relationships is a very good term to use here, and in fact, political incentives to do all sorts of bad shenanigans during the census. So let me guess something about the conclusion of this video, that he'll probably be a Marxist who diagnoses the problems accurately, at least. His solutions might be where we disagree.
that count also, it would actually be very difficult to sort of make it or assume it to be a neutral process because
Right.
methodologically caste is not going to be counted just like that. And third thing is that, well, with all these kinds of things, you counted caste. What do you do? Because caste is just a snapshot. You have to have a political will. And what kind of political will is behind that? That really matters, not caste census per se. Okay, without even caste census, if that political will exists, then many things would be done.
Very well said. He might mean something else, but we always go on saying from this channel that yes, we don't need reservations to uplift those poor people. Poor meaning metaphorically poor. Whoever's oppressed, just have strong law and order and encourage more businesses to come up or investments to happen, create a free market capitalism situation.
Things could have been done over last 70 years. You have dodged it systematically, and you're talking about a caste census suddenly. Okay, I would still add one more point because these kinds of discourses, actually deflect our basic attention from the basic points of something like state's responsibility of providing inputs for capacity building of all people. It is not something like a targeted issue. There are certain basic
Capacity building can happen when there are low taxes and great businesses, flourishing prosperity.
ingredients that people need: education, healthcare, and livelihood security. That has been neglected.
Livelihood security happens with strong law and order and the ability to sue police, of course. Health, education, हेल्थ तो ठीक है, चल रहा है, यूनिवर्सल भी है, अफोर्डेबल है, क्वालिटी थोड़ा बहुत घपला है यहाँ वहाँ, कहीं पे ठीक ठाक है. एडुकेशन तो गवर्नमेंट नहीं दे पाएगा, नहीं दे पा रहा है.
By such kind of pseudo issues in India. So this is my skepticism about caste census law.
So, sir, in the chapter colonial construction of caste, you have mentioned how British used the caste census and ultimately how a fluid system once became a rigid under this caste census and categorization.
Holy
so please explain.
shit.
Yeah.
Who was the first one in the Indian right wing to say this? The alleged casteist Jesai Deepak. Who's agreeing with him? A Dalit Marxist scholar from Maharashtra. What is happening in our country? And of course, Nicholas B. Dirks.
There are views about some people that caste did not exist in India and British discovered it.
Right.
That is absolute false. There is no doubt about it. Caste did exist.
Yeah, this is the Hindutva 1.0 crowd with whom we don't agree on this.
But you can imagine those days, ancient days, pre-colonial days for that matter. The castes were something like a social relationships. Okay, it defined social relationship with all its other features like hierarchy and all that thing. Maybe it was a localized kind of thing. It had a local context.
Absolutely.
And it survives in that manner. Caste was a pan-Indian reality
Right.
in one sense. But it was not the same system that prevailed everywhere.
Yes, Dr. Dipankar Gupta's research. Man, has he read all the same stuff that we have read, or has he done research that is this accurate? This is pretty good stuff. Neon, I beg you, I implore you to watch it from the beginning because this is very important and this is very fascinating and almost weird.
Caste in one region, the name of caste or anything actually differed
Right.
entirely in another region.
Yes.
It is not difficult to understand. It is not.
To repeat my example from one of my favorite social science papers of all time, especially on caste, the one by Hitesh Ranjan Shannal. I don't remember the name of the paper, but I have discussed that paper from our live streams, so I'll repeat this particular point for new viewers here. The title of my video on that paper is called "How to Buy Your Caste," where Hitesh Ranjan Shannal points out that when he's researching for example, the Teli communities in Bengal, the Vaishyas, he notices some places they are called Teli, some places they are called Tili, and some places there is no distinction between Teli and Tili. And in some villages, Tili has become the higher caste. In some places, Teli claims to be the higher caste. And in all of these situations, when people accumulate some money, they simply pay some money to a Brahmin to get new credentials and new genealogies made for him. Okay, so basically, how you either bribe or do an attestation legally from a government babu. That's what was going on.
Not something like conjectural thing or hypothetical thing, because India did not, during those days, there were not many communication means. There were no transport system, there were no telecommunication and all those kinds of things. So as a result, it did not pervade that the same kind of meanings were associated with caste in one region and it transcended to another region. So as a result, it remained basically a very context-ridden local kind of caste system.
Absolutely.
What happened was, in 1857, as British took a shock, the revolt that happened in 1857, and British realized, firstly, that they do not know India enough. And that's why they actually sent a battery of ethnographers and enumerators, etc., to India. And this caste census process started, 58, British Crown took over, and thereafter 1871 they started this process. Before that itself, I'll come to that later, but before that itself, the thinking had started, during this couple of decades that elapsed. So what the caste census did is actually this kind of relationship they extrapolated all over India. That
Exactly.
they made it a pan-Indian system
Exactly.
and fixated caste.
Right.
And not only that, the European things actually came from the Enlightenment,
Right.
the era of reason in one way, 1670 century. This kind of movement had been there. Something like the thing should be having the empirical base. This thing should have reason behind it. And this kind of notion, and there should be something like a scientific methodology guiding it. So with this kind of thing, this classification for everything, all those kinds of notions have come, and they categorize caste, okay, as a fixed entity across India. And not only that, basically they were guided by that mean informants. There were three sources of that.
Right.
Colonial enumerators.
Imagine how many, just remind yourself how many times we have discussed this from this channel as well. Okay. Everything depended on their informers. Their informers were mostly Tamil Brahmins and especially Bengali Brahmins. And if they had not been their informers, if the Jats had been their informers, the British would have declared that Jats are at the top of the hierarchy. Dumo would have said that India runs on what Jats say, and Jats oppress everyone else in the entire country. VXC, I don't think he has read Desai Deepak. But he has read the stuff Desai Deepak has read, because he is getting this from either Nicholas B. Dirks or from his own research.
And third, where the pseudoscience that emerged in Europe about the race.
Yeah.
So
it was back then the anthropology, okay, that pseudoscience is talking about. Anthropology that led to eugenics.
With these kinds of sources, they started fixating caste, hierarchies, that this caste is lower and all. Principle was what Brahmins told them.
Exactly.
Kinds of notions.
Exactly.
So,
बंगाली ब्राह्मण से आके पूछा कि अच्छा यहाँ पे ऊंच नीच कौन क्या है, कहाँ है, कौन ऊंच है, कौन नीच है. बंगाली ब्राह्मण ने बोल दिया कि हाँ भाई हम तो यहाँ पे सबसे बड़े दादा है, हमारे चाचा विधायक है, जाओ ये लिख दो. वही से वो फिक्स हो गया, वो रेटिफाइड हो गया एंड रिजिडिफाइड हो गया, एकदम सील मोहर लग गया उस पर, और कभी चेंज नहीं होगा ये.
They created in a way a system, which was of a pan-Indian nature and which got quite rigidified.
Right.
And this was actually transferred into education. So education, the jobs.
Finally, a Marxist who doesn't lie all the time and is not completely hateful. Maybe he hates stuff we like, but finally. I haven't respected a Marxist in a long time.
And recruitment in army and police, etc., started happening. So this is the kind of situation colonial people created. So it was no more a pre-colonial.
Although to be fair,
local.
To be fair to Marxists, this discourse probably does exist in post-colonial studies as well. So there are people who know this stuff, and we have repeatedly found out from research papers and books and even talks in seminars that happen, that academics inside academia do believe this, but the parties they support and the parties they vehemently oppose, those parties do not believe in this stuff. No matter what they know, no matter what they believe, they will talk and act like all this is wrong, like he is wrong, like the academics are all wrong, like Dipankar Gupta is wrong, Nicholas B. Dirks is wrong. Only one right is Dumo and Louis Dumo, and that therefore casteism happened with the same families that are lower caste today. Their ancestors 5,000 years back were being oppressed by Desai Deepak's ancestors 5,000 years back, and that was exactly happening to these exact same families in the entire country, which even Ambedkar disagrees with. What's the penalty for apostasy in Marxism? Being called a fascist.
Relationship that castes were, but it became a fixed kind of system where caste had a fixed kind of hierarchical positions in the system.
So there is also mention that how various caste groups.
অরিন্দম বলছে বাহ খুব ইন্টারেস্টিং, 26-এ বিজেপি হারলে তারপরে বলবে কিনা দেখা যাক.
Across India at that time in 1881 and during that time, how they formalized their caste status,
right,
like Brahman Bhumihar caste in North India. So what was that process and how it impacted in a caste system?
The example he gives here of Bhumihars is pretty much the same with what Hitesh Ranjan Shanal pointed out with Telis and Tilis in Bengal.
And overall the social hierarchies.
Yeah, you see, when British started this fixating caste, in a pan-Indian hierarchy, and got them into administration.
Very important phrase to, very important choice of terminologies to remember and acknowledge here, guys. The British fixated caste. He means fix the caste into a rigid structure, of course. But it's important because he's saying it, because he's a Dalit Marxist scholar himself.
To base employment, recruitment, etc. on that. The various communities saw an opportunity, to kind of negotiate their position in a caste hierarchy. So, as you said,
Negotiation, making up your own genealogies by paying a random Brahmin, attestation from a government babu, or bribing a babu to get your fake attestation even.
Brahmin Bhumiyar. Today, it is a common kind of hyphenated phrase, but Bhumiyars were not Brahmins. Earlier, in Greek colonial days, Bhumiyas were the land owning caste and were normally treated as Shudras, okay, like our Kunbis for that matter. Such they were populous caste everywhere. But in certain localized manner, Bhumiyas had acquired quite a power, local power. And with that kind of thing, they
भाई नाम में भूमि है, लैंड ओनिंग है, वो पावर एक्यूमुलेट नहीं करेगा तो क्या मैं करूंगा?
negotiated, they appealed to the enumerators and British bureaucrats, etc. They produced genealogies, mobilized their political networks, etc.
Oh, he has read Hitesh Ranjan Channal. I will bet my this fake cigarette.
And claim that they were actually Brahmins. And they convinced the British rulers and got them Bhumiyar Khan. It's not only Bhumiyas. Most of the caste that you see as a middle caste, they raised their standing like castes in east and north and elsewhere even. They became quasi-Brahmins. Okay.
Castes became quasi-Brahmins. Very, very accurately said, first and foremost. But the juicier part of this claim and argument is even more interesting, which is in Bengal, everyone other than Brahmins were declared officially meaning theologically speaking, to be Shudras. Okay, so then how do castes become quasi-Brahmins or even accumulate power and become respected and ritually pure and stuff? Because of the non-rigidity of the caste system.
Not like that. Marathas closer home in Maharashtra, they also did the same thing. They were powerful in certain pockets, and that power, localized power, and their economic status, etc., was taken as base, and they actually mobilized the political networks to claim higher status. So this process has happened, and and there were so many meaning it happened across the caste, but the variable remained something like that power to negotiate. And this became something like a sanctified, certified kind of caste identities that emerged. So you will.
Oh, Polymerase, he wrote this article yesterday only. I see, nice. Neon is saying, if I am a quasi-Brahmin, should I be eligible for quasi-reservations? No. If you're a quasi-Dalit, you might be eligible for quasi-reservations. But if you're a quasi-Brahmin, you are eligible for quasi-exodus from Tamil Nadu.
And nobody questions now Bhumiyar being Brahmins and something like Marathas being higher than Kunbis. That meant in every province or state, this kind of phenomena exists.
Today, we are seeing that how castes are being used for the political mobilization. But you have argued in the book that...
Yeah. Today we are seeing, it just started 5 minutes back. Yes, absolutely.
This is not the new process. Caste-based political mobilization started or solidified after caste census started in British rule. So please explain it more.
Yeah, as we discussed, caste census brought in huge visibility of community clusters, right? So many communities, like we discussed about the middle castes, something like Bhumiyars, Kayas, etc., raising their social status. The other phenomenon was that it also opened.
Raising the social status. Status is everything. Therefore, leftists and right-wingers need to stop saying that castes are simply classes, and therefore it's देखो जो right-wingers बोलते हैं कि castes are just class or classes, and therefore caste is not uniquely an Indian evil thing. It has happened everywhere. Your conclusion is right, and in fact, but your argument is wrong. the path you are taking to that conclusion is wrong. Yes, casteism existed everywhere, but not because it was class, because status groups exist everywhere, because exclusive groups exist everywhere, and the tendency for every exclusive groups to create an outgroup and have their own consumption patterns, that fucking exists everywhere, not because it's class. Class is something different.
Up, the caste inequities
Kuwati, the name of the author is Hitesh Ranjan Sanyal.
in terms of education, because this got linked with the administrative thing, and people, the inequities that were in the society became sort of visible. So many caste clusters, like which were lower, Shudra, Ati Shudra, typically of Phule's conception, they started saying that their status has been very, very this thing, and if they kind of stake claims for better kind of education, better kind of representation, etc., there is an opportunity. So
Okay, so Phule did he also use the word status in English? If that is so, then that's pretty interesting, because the moment you call it status, it means you are acknowledging something other than just economic capital. Then cultural capital and social capital comes into action, especially cultural capital, and your consumption patterns that decide whether you are high or low in statuses. And how is that only a Hindu thing, bro? That's a universal human condition. Now, therefore, if some people say that, wait, I'll come to this point a little later.
suddenly with caste census, this kind of phenomena came in. The numbers became salient. Okay, the salience was used for political mobilization. With the and it happened all across again. Okay, just to take an example, that it happened in Maharashtra, Mahas for that matter, Kurmis and Yadavs, etc. in north. These people started sort of just asking better kind of reservation like thing, the representation and institutions and governance, all those kinds of demands started coming in. So these were the politicization process that happened in the lower strata too.
So it is commonly used that British use this divide and rule policy. So you think this caste census also helped them to divide and rule?
Basically, caste census was used for that. Okay, divide and rule policy, because the basic
Oh
intention
my
of Britishers
God.
were that
What is happening? He's saying everything every Hindutvadi says. Okay, now I have other concerns. Wait, let me just respond to VXT. No, VXT, I have not read it. Neon is saying, if the West calls caste system as a purely Hindu thing, doesn't that also mean that Hindu society was by far the most sophisticated society when it came to structure and sociological organization? That is a fair argument, but then commies get to say that, you see, sophisticated or not, that doesn't matter. You created the most evil system of all time, other than slavery. Neon is saying, but then how do they call us backwards in the same breath? Because sophisticated does not mean good or bad. You might have a sophisticated, very elaborate way of killing someone. There is more than one way to skin a cat, isn't it? Now my concern is this guy co-opted by BJP? Is he like a Dilip Mondol, who is also probably or probably not co-opted by BJP? But I don't think he's co-opted by BJP, because BJP doesn't say these things. Nobody in BJP knows these things. They are all Dumunchian as well. So a guy who is not co-opted is going on saying things which Hindutwadis say. It's pretty fascinating stuff.
India cannot be governed. India is a vast kind of subcontinent size of country, and India could not be governed, without dividing people. So dividing rule actually comes handy. This is a formula strategy for all the rulers. So they cannot govern people without that kind of stratagem. Caste census helped them immensely, because caste census, something like the enumeration of caste, religion, communities, etc., deepened the division in society. And as again we discussed earlier, this became something like it created a consciousness in communities. Okay, those communities which actually were clustered, they were small, micro. They had a micro existence in the locales, but they now became quite silent, all across India. So these people started that community started that division, and consciousness started getting deepened, and people started comparing with each other. That became a competitive thing, that certain communities assert more benefits, etc., in governance structure. So we ought to get it, and all that kind of thing. So it deflected their attention. It becomes an internecine kind of competition between caste, communities, religion, etc., etc., and actually deflected their attention of opposing the colonial rule collectively. That is the greatest benefit of divide and rule.
Wow.
Because today also the
Holy shit. This is a very, very strong and significant accusation to make, guys. He's saying the caste census divided Indians. British did it deliberately to divide Indians, and that ensured that lower castes don't take part to that extent in anti-colonial movements. And remember, Ambedkar also wrote to the British saying that you must make sure you take care of the lower castes because they have been your foot soldiers in the British Indian Army. By the way, Neon is saying I'm fine with commies perceiving me to be evil. I should be offended if they saw anything I stood for to be good. My main point is that it was sophisticated and hence powerful. No, you believe in that because you've been reading and thinking a lot of Nietzsche, but that's not what those Westerners are thinking. Remember, they only believe in good and evil. So they don't care if your sophistication makes you powerful. They are worried about your sophistication being a sophisticated tool to oppress people with, and hence bad, and hence evil, and hence hell, and hence you require salvation, and hence no beyond good and evil, only good and only evil.
same kind of thing is being done in a different way. The caste census actually deflects our entire attention from the basic issues. People
Yeah.
get flown with that kind of ideas. So this is what has been happening. So it's very obvious that the caste census facilitated the strategy of divide and rule.
So you also pointed out that
Fuck.
caste census helped British to bring laws which stigmatize the communities or tribes like Pardhi in
Yes.
Maharashtra or Santhal in East India.
Wow.
So please explain how
Wow.
caste census did
Yes.
help to do this.
Awesome.
Yeah. As I said, the caste census was based on three sources like Brahmin informants, colonial enumerators, and pseudoscientific notions of race. So these helped them formulate. So they started mapping the caste, after getting the census done, and associated during this mapping certain criminalities, etc., with certain caste groups, and they started viewing like that. That is a criminality, the caste trait. It's a
Criminality castrate bana diya tha. But even I've heard this argument from Hindutvadis that so many tribes were simply declared criminal castes forever.
yeah. So, and therefore they viewed many nomadic, pastoral, or tribes as a criminal people. The criminality came as something like by birth.
Okay.
So this is what the racial theory.
Yeah.
So that way they
The caste
law was brought. Criminal Tribe Act of 1871. Now you can think of 1871, the caste census started. So it is not directly the product of census.
Yeah.
But this thinking had started during those intervening decades, 2 decades. So this had crystallized that they started sort of viewing
Yes.
the caste in a racial terms.
Yes.
And started associating criminality, etc., with something like some people. And this way, the thousands of people were sort of
Hence, anthropology led to eugenics.
Forced into settlements. They were intensely surveilled, and they were criminalized. And this actually this way they sort of instituted this
caste tribe, criminal tribe.
Yeah, criminal tribes.
Yeah. So one important phase during the British rule about the caste is various movements started by Mahatma Phule in Maharashtra or Periyar in Tamil Nadu, Satyashodha Samaj or self-respect movement. So do you think these movements were also a result of caste census, and how caste that enumeration ultimately led to the formation of these kinds of movements for the right?
Yeah, a fair question. That did the caste census help as well?
For the self-respect?
Absolutely. Caste census actually catalyzed these movements. They were unintended consequence, one could say.
Unintended.
In a sense that the the categorization or the amalgamation of very many castes, all across, as we discussed earlier, brought in quite a visibility. And these data simultaneously produce the disproportionate kind of inequality in existence.
Yeah, it did backfire on them in the same way that creating this class of well-educated Indians from Sri Aurobindo to Lal Balpal, Bonkim, etc., who were educated in the British system and then decided that the British need to be kicked out. This is where you see Enlightenment itself backfired on on England, I think, because when we were discussing that book by Steven Pinker, which we will after this live stream as well, that everything seems to be fine. The ideas are great. They don't have one clause about protecting that place where those ideas are practiced. And so they were the only ones who got kicked out from India among all the oppressors. They were the ones who are okay to be criticized as colonizers, settler colonizers, and the ones to oppress and kill, do genocides of Indians. Nobody else. It has been okay for 70 years, until one Bengali composer decides that Sardar Udham Singh, the movie, should not be sent to the Oscars because the British people will feel hurt about it. Of course, that might be some sort of post Enlightenment thing that has gone to the heads of Bengalis. And then that same England also leaves the door open for all sorts of people to come in who are destroying their nice neighborhoods.
In the society, the lower caste started seeing that they're educationally, in terms of land owning and in terms of social relationships, etc., they have been sort of subjugated by certain castes. And from that, the consciousness arose, and certain leaders like Mahatma Phule in Maharashtra or Periyar later on in South India actually started sort of spreading this kind of awareness among the people. So Mahatma Phule, for instance, is a very remarkable person, so to have conceived something like Shudra Ati Shudra, so bringing together something like in class terms as Marx conceived, like this versus that. So Mahatma Phule's equation was Shetji Bhatji versus Shudra Ati Shudra. This is very, nobody notices in that way, but I would say it is a remarkable kind of conception.
In today's context, the equivalent would be heterosexuals versus LGBTQ.
So this came in, and these movements, of lower caste got
Cisgender heterosexuals versus LGBTQ.
a new vocabulary. It's actually
Yeah.
product of caste census, something like rights, representation, and respect. Self-based respect, etc. Actually, this kind of vocabulary is a contribution of caste census in a way, which was, I would say, that unintended consequence, because even British did not foresee it, and nobody rather could imagine that such thing would happen. But this came up, and this is a very positive kind of byproduct of caste census.
So as you said that the Periyar's movement or Phule's movement was in a way a reflection of this caste census, reaction to the caste census. This is a centenary year of Periyar's self-respect movement. You see that the new caste census, which is going to happen in the next 1 or 2 years, that is going to, in a way, restart the movement of rights, the respect in the lower caste, in the Shudra, the Shudras of today's India. Do you foresee something like this?
I would not see that replication in this phase. This was something like a birth of that movement. That it was something like origin of that kind of consciousness in the lower strata where nothing existed. So that was brought about by the caste census. But now the caste census is totally different. After elapsing 100 years, lot many changes have already come in. The lower strata is totally corrupted. It is mostly in the lap of the reactionary forces, and and as a matter of fact, this kind of engendering the similar kind of consciousness is not going to help because it exists.
What did he just say? The lowest strata is completely corrupted.
So there is nothing going to be contributed by this census, in terms of raising that consciousness. Okay, rather the most probable and probably the root cause of this caste census is the subcategorization. That kind of demand might rather emerge from the lower strata, and it would entail further division among them. Caste census in British time basically correlated all these castes together, but now they would subdivide it, then, and they would start sort of demanding Sub-categorization.
So as you said, this current caste status census is going to sub-categorize the caste further. Like in 1931, there were some 4,000 castes. And in 2011 census, we saw that around 46 lakh castes or sub-castes were emerged. So you think this process is going to accelerate after the current or the proposed caste census?
Again, linked to what we discussed, I do not believe that there is a definite number of caste. Okay, caste is a notion, as Baba Sahib Ambedkar also said, and many other people corroborate it. So caste is not something like an entity which is made of brick and mortar, because that can be measured very strictly. So it was a pragmatic move of the British colonizers that they arrived at some figure. They had to arrive at some figure because that again percolated down from enlightened notions, etc. So they had to sort of concretize the whatever they see as social phenomena, and they did that. Now, again, as I said earlier, howsoever caste were fixated, that a basic tendency of caste to split like amoeba had not disappeared. So over the years, again, there has been a mutation of caste. Okay, so as a result, it is not that the caste there is something like added to the caste, etc. But what ICCC 2011 captured as some 4.6 million caste actually testifies to what I say, that is probably comes closer. People have blamed it for the methodological mess up. That people started sort of recording what people said, and there was a lot of spelling mistakes, and because of that, this kind of unwieldy number arrived.
And we heard 8 crore mistakes. We heard this number.
So those mistakes, etc., if you apply the data science
Is Tilia and Teli considered a spelling mistake?
methodology of cleaning, that can be taken care. That is not a big issue. But in other way around, I would say that it comes closer to what castes are. That is the caste. What people say are the caste. So that might go beyond even 4.6 million. Who knows?
So in the chapter what led us here, you have clearly mentioned that caste census is necessary. You are mentioning the phrase used by Satish Deshpande, it is nation selfie. So why it is necessary if it is going to create so many problems, possibly so many problems?
What?
Good question.
Good question.
I would agree with Professor Satish Deshpande to the extent he says that caste census is going to provide national selfie. It's like national selfie. So I also said it in a different words. This is something like a snapshot of our status. It would expose something like inequalities, exclusion, and redistribution problems that exist in the society. So that kind of picture can be presented. Okay, and any data, as I again said, that as a data science person, would not detest data. More the data, better it is to understand it. Problem is not that. Problem is dealing with the politics behind caste census. We are discussing.
Without politics, so ये होगा नहीं. The problem is that it will create incentives amongst people to declare themselves to be lower caste or backward, just based on any and every random grievance.
Politics behind caste census, not caste census per se. Caste census is, and I elaborately explained that caste census is not going to be a neutral process. There are issues about it, and everywhere the politics get intermingled. So that cannot be sort of ignored. So the basic question would be, what do you do with having your own selfie? Okay, are you going to change your face? Are you going to kind of make yourself more beautiful and all that kind of thing? That cannot be done. It's a different process than taking a selfie. So the same analogy could apply, that in order to use these caste data for improving the social justice system or improving the lives of people, there would have to be a political will backing it. That is absent.
So you mentioned this redistribution of sources. Okay, this is what being mentioned by DMK in Tamil Nadu, or RJD in Bihar, Samajwadi Party in Uttar Pradesh, and now Rahul Gandhi in all over India, that caste
And they are doing a stellar job of it.
census is going to help in the redistribution of national resources. How do you see it? Because they are just looking at the brighter picture of the situation, and they are ignoring completely the practical situation, how caste are going to be measured and all.
To be fair to the politicians, they are not looking at any picture except their future picture of winning votes and winning elections and becoming a minister.
Yes, actually, DMK, RJD, and lately Congress demanding a caste census, this cannot be conflated with the political will. Okay, this is a reaction to BJP's using caste to create their formidable base among the
Yeah.
OBCs. So all these people woke up that they have to activate their caste base because DMK survived on the non-Brahmin caste, RJD and others also the same way. Congress actually was not, but Congress also fell in line because they also started seeing their power base started dwindling, and they have now fallen back to activating caste. So this cannot be conflicted with the basic motivation remains the electoral drawing something like out of these lower castes, some electoral change to them. So this cannot be conflicted with the political will for redistribution per se. And what kind of redistribution going to be there? Are they going to distribute power? Are they going to distribute wealth in the country? Are they going to therefore stop inheritance
No, Zirat, he said national resources, not natural resources.
of the wealth? All these kinds of things should naturally occur to people, and they should ask such questions. And if the answer is in affirmative, then only the political will could be acknowledged.
You said this RJD, Congress, and other parties, whatever their demands is actually a reactionary politics to the BJP's base. BJP
Absolutely.
expanding its base in lower.
Absolutely true. Yeah.
But BJP also opposed the caste census from the start in the name that it will break the Hindu unity. And suddenly they took a different stand now and they are going to do this caste census. How do you see this contradiction or BJP's double game?
Yeah, we could see this in this way. Okay, it's true that BJP has been opposing even in the recent years. BJP opposed this emergence of demand for caste census very vehemently and forcefully. In 2021, for instance, they submitted the affidavit in the Supreme Court and clearly said, and emphatically said, that it's a government's conscious policy not to include caste in the next census. Okay, the Supreme Court cannot intervene in such kind of things because it's a government policy. It's government policy. Law cannot intervene in that. Then during 24, all this intervening year, they have been opposing very, very forcefully. During 24 elections, Modi had gone to the extent that demand for caste census, is an urban Naxal demand. It is going to divide the country, etc. Okay, and suddenly on 30th April this year, they surreptitiously took a cabinet decision that caste would be included in census. BJP can do any somersault, and people they are very confident that people would not react because they have created something like a bhakt, the constituency of bhakt for themselves to back up. So whatever that they does, they are very sure that their vote base is not going to be affected. So this is the kind of thing. What is BJP's intention, or what is the reason that BJP suddenly took this somersault can be discerned. Now, Bihar elections were there, and 24 they have already a jolt. Okay, if they had not the support from Chandrababu Naidu and Nitish Kumar had happened, BJP was on the verge of losing power. So they became quite alert. Now, 24 election data, if you minutely analyze, BJP noted that they had taken the OBC as a homogeneous group supporting them was not a fact. Okay, the upper layers of OBC was actually shifting away from them, and the lower strata of OBC actually remained faithful to them. So there was not much of a dent in the lower strata. And so this is a clue that lower strata needs to be reinforced. Okay, further, because upper strata of BJP is something like a Brahminical caste. They are educated people and they can see through the tactics of BJP and they can understand. And over the years, they have understood and they started shifting to other parties. But lower strata has been very faithful to them. They're illiterate people and they can be made into bhakts. So this is one of the trumps. Second trump is Bihar election.
हाँ, मेड इन टू भक्स तो चाहिए भी नहीं. थोड़ा पैसा वैसा दे दो, ये बहना वो बहना बोल के इन्वेस्टमेंट का नाम देके इन्वेस्टमेंट नहीं करोगे फिर भी मिलेगा डायरेक्ट कैश बस. ठीक है, तो भक्त होने का जरूरत भी नहीं है.
That Nitish now, if actually BJP persists with opposition to the caste census, that would give a different kind of signal in Bihar. Yeah. Okay. Nitish Kumar carried out this caste census fairly successfully and proposed even policies based upon that. It is a different matter that all those kinds of things are not rectified because presently the Supreme Court is not blessing them. Tomorrow, if BJP start blessing and Modi comes to saying everything in the country is happening, the Supreme Court also will follow in line, and the crux of that is a 50% cap of the reservation, etc., would be done away with. So that is the third kind of second prompt that can be taken as the reason behind. Third is that all political parties grouped together, the India bloc as such, started demanding caste census. That caught people's imagination. Caste census became a very dominant kind of discourse in the country. So BJP could not ill approach to sort of ignore it. And
Zeroth. Rizrat is saying, I just think what will happen to the Meena caste once full exposure of economic status is done along with caste census. Actually, kuch nahi hoga us basis pe, because remember again, caste and class is not the same. With caste, we are talking about social status, which includes social capital and cultural capital, and whether or not they have been oppressed and kept away from social and cultural capital as well as economic capital in the last 5,000 years. And now they will argue that they now have economic capital, but पहले जो social capital और cultural capital हमको let's say अर्जन करने नहीं दिया गया, उसका रिवेंज है रिजर्वेशन वगैरह, नॉट कि पहले गरीब थे अभी अमीर बन गए हैं. दैट्स नॉट देयर आर्गुमेंट. Therefore the counter to their argument cannot be simply economics.
And that they found something like a strategic lever to prick the balloon of the discourse. Okay, so these basically three things are behind the BJP's kind of volte-face about the caste census. Okay, their intention is not distributive or anything. BJP doesn't have any kind of intention of redistribution, etc. They would actually reformulate, because ultimately.
Oh, finally something we disagree with this man. 38 minutes into the interview, he finally says something insanely wrong. He says BJP doesn't believe in redistribution, they're not interested about redistribution. तो ये बहना वो बहना क्या है? रिजर्वेशन क्या है? इंक्रीजिंग रिजर्वेशन क्या है? हर बूथ पे रिजर्वेशन क्या है? बिहार में 10,000 रुपए क्या है? वो रिडिस्ट्रीब्यूशन नहीं है तो और क्या रिडिस्ट्रीब्यूशन है? और क्या रिडिस्ट्रीब्यूट करना बाकी रह गया है? मेरा पैंट उतार के किसी बच्चे को दे दोगे, उसके पास पैंट नहीं है, ये रिडिस्ट्रीब्यूट होगा?
All this caste data interpretation remains, and they would ensure that it remains within the framework of their ideological framework. And it right to max, the BJP would use the data for political coalitions.
हाँ बड़बड़ी का तुर्क के वंशज है, फिर भी ऑपरेशन हुआ था क्योंकि इंडिया इस्लामोफोबिक कंट्री है.
Reformulating political coalition, not beyond.
So as you said that BJP is not having a bigger aim of redistribution of resources or something like that.
नहीं.
But there is also fear.
Bigger aim आने के बाद मेरा पैंट उतारा जाएगा. अभी छोटा aim है, इसलिए सब पैसा ये बहन वो बहन के पास जा रहा है.
Being expressed that EWS quota, the way BJP introduced it, the way Supreme Court upheld it, and this caste census is ultimately going to abolish the caste-based reservation, and this new thing will emerge in the context of reservation. You see something like this going to happen?
Absolutely. I have explicated that in the book also, that one of the long-term motivation of BJP linked with this caste census is that because ideologically RSS has been against caste-based reservations. Okay, BJP inherits that ideological stance. EWS has been milestone, a very sinister milestone in India's history. So it instituted basically the reservations for Brahminic.
Okay, now we are in that territory where he even here we agree, but he calls them sinister intentions, and we would disagree with that characterization.
Caste, upper caste, and on economic basis. But the economic basis in this country, when one thing should be understood, that economic status of the people in India is not measured.
Yeah.
Okay. So unlike Western countries, there is something like a documentation of economic status, and very periodical, a very reliable kind of thing. In India, it happens that whatever you say your economic status is the thing. This is your economic income, and that is it. There is no way to justify it. So on that basis, this AWS system has been instituted, and very surprisingly, the Supreme Court also validated. These days, such things are not very uncommon. It is absolutely unconstitutional because reservation did not have
Yeah.
anything to do with economic status of people. It
True.
was a historical
Yes.
disadvantage. The BJP actually reformulated narrative that
हिस्टोरिकल डिसएडवांटेज अगर है तो मेरा जिजिया का रिपेरेशन कहाँ पे है?
it is not the historical disadvantage or social backwardness of people, etc. But the current kind of economic disadvantage that people face needs to be rectified. So this is the driver. Now, how this caste census should ultimately be used to create another narrative against the caste-based reservation is this: that the likely caste data is going to show what? It is going to show that there is a huge inequality, intra-caste inequality, because within caste itself there is a huge intra-caste inequality. So that drives in one way to the subcategorization. So BJP is happy with that because backward caste in their splintered, better it is. And the second
see.
kind of narrative that emerges
This is pretty interesting an argument.
sort of the same kind of data, that the social these reservation policies based on caste so far have really outlived their purpose. They have not served the purpose. Okay, so there should now be actually modernized, brought it to something like a big meaning to better rational, and should be repackaged. Okay, that could be economic, because these data are going to show it is not confined to only lower caste. Initially, I thought that they might not, because they club together, at an earlier surveys in elsewhere, all upper caste, their general category. So no, and they really gone into even upper caste status. And probably when he says that upper caste also would be included, most people believe that in the forthcoming caste census, the upper caste also would be included in the same manner, same granularity. So that granularity would bring in something like upper caste inequities also. So I would say that there is no caste. We actually rhetorically speak about inequality, but there is a mathematical measure for that. There's a Gini coefficient that measures something like inequality. So on any base. So if you take any caste as such and compute the Gini coefficient, it is not going to be different. My guess is across the caste. The same kind of inequality would exist among Mahars as in a Jit Pawans. Okay, that is going to happen. So what does it mean? That caste-based reservations are it would be seeding that narrative. That caste-based reservation is not going to fulfill this thing. That's why it's a matter of actually rectifying the economic inequality, because what you are messaging is alluding to that. So that narrative gets helped formulated. So this is the kind of narrative that they would after this euphoria dies down, then they would create this kind of narrative to abolish the caste-based reservation system.
So this is BJP's position. But the way Rahul Gandhi tried to push the idea for last 2 years, how do you see Congress stand on the caste census? Because for 60 years they did nothing. They strategically avoided the idea, and now they are pushing it. How do you say?
I would say Congress lost its moorings. So when Rahul Gandhi speaks, one does not know whether Congress is behind it. So it's like that. But let's go beyond this kind of reading. And what Congress realized is that, if you go back to constitution making, history of constitution making, etc., the reservation for backward caste, etc., were instituted by whose blessings? It was a Congress oligarchy. Okay, they were demand, no doubt. But Nehru-like persons were not for caste things. He was very skeptical about whole thing. So after in order to institute this backward class reservation, Kalelkar committee, Kalelkar committee commission was constituted, and it came out with report, and Congress rejected it. And over, as you said, 70 years now, there was no move from the Congress to measure caste.
And we have a pet conspiracy theory on this channel that Congress was about to completely wholesale get away from caste-based politics, because mysteriously from the late 90s, leftist scholars, one after the other, not even leftist, at least credentialed social science, significant social science scholars start criticizing caste-based reservations. Andre Beti, Dipankar Gupta, Irfan Habib's legendary paper on caste in 1997. So they I think Congress has been forced back into playing caste politics because of BJP's success.
So this now suddenly Congress wakes up. Now what is the prompt? Prompt is that is a political debacle. It
Yeah.
doesn't have any reliable kind of social base, political base to really expect that they would come to power again. So they realized that OBC have been very skillfully taken away from Congress. Congress projected itself a party of national unity and relied on secularism.
VXT चितपावन ब्राह्मण्स को रिजर्वेशन नहीं एटलीस्ट reparations तो मिलना ही चाहिए by leftist standards of historical injustice and stuff from every Congress worker.
Nationalism and this kind of thing.
The broader alliance.
Broader alliance, catch-all alliance. That one time, Gandhi's time, right? Gandhi representing that he represented entire India. Same stance actually populated down to Congress. That Congress said that we are the national party, so we represent it. It is not principally very different from BJP projecting they are the Hindu party. So BJP's opposition to caste census also that with caste census the Hindu unity will be splintered. Now Congress obsession was the same, similar, that their national unity projection would be kind of.
Holy shit! Did he just confirm my conspiracy theory, or he's accusing Congress of the same things? I see.
Destroyed with this kind of fragmentation. So this is the kind of thing. Now one should now ask Congress whether they have really that political conviction or ideological conviction about the redistribution. That
अरे बाबा, कांग्रेस का बीजेपी का रिडिस्ट्रीब्यूशन जिनको रिडिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लगता ही नहीं है, समझो कि वो कांग्रेस से कैसा रिडिस्ट्रीब्यूशन मांगते हैं. बट the good news for him is that Congress does believe it today.
There needs redistribution. Now, Rahul Gandhi picked up Kashi Ram slogan. Let that be said aloud. That is a Kashi Ram slogan. Jiski jitni sankhya vari, usni uski hissedari. The natural question comes in, what is this hissedari or bhagidari about?
Jizya reparations.
In what? In kind of government service, which the base of which actually dwindled with a neoliberal policy brought in by Congress itself. Okay, hugely supported by BJP, no problem. But Congress is a party which technically brought it about, and neoliberalism actually eroded the base of reservation, privatization.
कहाँ है वो लोग आज कहाँ हो तुम लोग? ये सब चीजों को वेस्टर्न स्टाइल कैपिटलिज्म बोलने वालों, जो कि रिजर्वेशन को भी अपोज करते हो, मगर बोलते हो ये सब भी खराब है, जो मेन चीज रिजर्वेशन को इरेलेवेंट बना देता है, कहाँ हो भोसरी वालों? एसी टेम्परेचर क्या 26 में दिया या 34 में दिया?
Contractualization, so many things have been going on in public sector and government sector. This Modi brought in something like that policy, of recruiting directly from the private sector.
Lateral entries.
Lateral entry.
Sanjeev Sanyal.
Do this thing. What is that? So with various ways, actually the base of reservation have been eroded. So this now they talk about
erode हो गया. Erode हुआ तो वो गलत हुआ. लोगों को oppressed बैठ के रिजर्वेशन ही लेना चाहिए. बिना oppressed हुए रिजर्वेशन ना लिए नौकरी में नहीं घुसना चाहिए. ये है जीनियस आर्ग्यूमेंट मार्क्सिस्ट का. तो ठीक है, आफ्टर ऑल मार्क्सिस्ट ही है.
Suddenly with this kind of thing, in where is the kind of what do they mean by giving due share to
jizya reparations
various communities? So again I would repeat, is that share in something like the representation in the legislature? Ambedkar is the person who fought most, hardest for this political reservation. Ambedkar's plank was firstly the political reservation, and he gained during colonial era, but he regretted thereafter and he started demanding till he died that this reservation should be annulled. No, but now this reservation became beneficial to other parties, and they would ignore Ambedkar. Who are you?
Unintended consequences. ये एक बार संदीप सन्याल ने बोला था कि मार्क्सिस्ट लेफ्टिस्ट कुछ भी रैंडम चीजें करेंगे, उससे कुछ किसी का गाड़ मारा जाएगा, फिर बोल देंगे भैया ये तो अनइंटेंडेड कॉन्सिक्वेंस था.
So this is what it is. Now this political reservation has been already beneficial to them, and they are talking about the hissedari in that. Hissedari will come in land distribution. Are they going to do that?
No, संजीव सन्याल ने, थॉमस वेल ने कहा था.
History
No, Sandeep Sanyal ने भी कहा था. Sorry for interrupting too many times.
to come in something like a equalizing the kind of educational input to all children. Are they going to do that? History comes in something like
हाँ, तो right to education तो हुआ. All children educated बन गया ना.
having a universal base of healthcare. They are going to do that.
यूनिवर्सल बेस नहीं है. हाँ हाँ, शायद कुछ गांव में तो ज्यादा चल के जाना वाना पड़ता है, मगर वो तो बढ़ रहा है. अगर बढ़ रहा है तो क्या एग्जैक्टली कंप्लेन है कि और स्पीड से क्यों नहीं बढ़ रहा है?
Nothing of this kind of being spoken, it's just a rhetorical kind of thing, is raising storm in people and creating political discourses.
So, at the end, you are not fully convinced that what caste census is going to happen, how it is going to change the people's life.
Inequalities.
Yeah, inequality. So then, what government should be doing?
Acha. You see, this is where again he sounds like Irfan Habib's 1997 paper, where the diagnosis is what we agree with. His criticism, his main solution to the problem is where we disagree. That inequality is inevitable. If you try to solve inequality, you will screw the entire society or the country or state where it's tried.
For this, because if the caste census is not the answer, then what is?
You see, caste census cannot repair the inequalities in the country. Okay, it is something.
But caste-based reservations can. Huh? How can reservations then treat that, or let's say have a treatment for that inequality? भाई कुछ भी रैंडम नौकरी मिल जाएगा लोअर क्वालिफिकेशन से, कहीं पे भी घुस जाएंगे यूनिवर्सिटीज में लोअर क्वालिफिकेशन से, तो वो इनइक्वालिटी चला जाएगा. वो इनइक्वालिटी फिर इकोनॉमिक इनइक्वालिटी है ना, वो तो कल्चरल और सोशल इनइक्वालिटी का बात नहीं हो रहा है, क्योंकि सबको पता है कि अच्छा ये सरनेम है तो ये तो रिजर्वेशन से ही घुसा है, तो उसका कहाँ से इनइक्वालिटी जा रहा है भाई? एकमात्र इनइक्वालिटी जो जाएगा वो है इकोनॉमिक इनइक्वालिटी, और उस पर तो तुम लोग बोल रहे हो कि ईडब्ल्यूएस नहीं चाहिए क्योंकि ये तो 5000 साल का और तरह का ऑपरेशन के लिए ये रिवेंज है, ये तो सिर्फ पैसे का बात नहीं है. तो इनइक्वालिटी कौन सा है, पैसे का या नॉन पैसे का?
Like BJP thinks of caste. The castes are good. They should live, but they should all live amicably. There should be samarasta in this thing, and they imagine that ancient India had that kind of samarasta. So that should be like that. They are not talking about. They will dodge the word samata. Yeah, samata they will not talk about. It's samarasta. But it is also like that because caste census actually is based on inequality. So they are not questioning the inequalities per se. It's a notion people carry that inequalities would be done away with. No, caste inequalities, all inequalities in the society, they would exist. It is a social justice measure that those people who are suffering these inequalities are to be patched up.
वो रिजर्वेशन से चला जाएगा तो गया क्यों नहीं 80 सालों में?
So that is the thing. So they are never claiming that inequality. So let us not get onto inequality. What actually government should be doing, and let me before that say that the inequalities in the society is not only due to caste.
Yeah,
They have been hugely reinforced by the neoliberal policies, the government policies.
which eroded caste-based reservations. Okay, eroding of caste-based reservations entails what? What does that phrase mean, as uttered by him himself? Eroding of reservations means eroding of the relevance of reservations, which means people are not even seeking reservations in government jobs because they have some other lucrative job. What the fuck? Why is eroding that system a bad thing? क्या बोल रहा है आदमी? I don't get Marxists. Are they genius or dumb? It's an open-ended question.
That the inequalities in the society is not only due to caste. They have been hugely reinforced by the neoliberal policies, the government policies. So neoliberal policies, right from last 91 we adopted probably, and from there on it is going on. The entire neoliberal model has failed world over, etc., that we don't take.
Failed all world over. What? इन इस प्रोफेसर को अजय मल्ला रेड्डी के साथ 5 मिनट बिठाना चाहिए.
Get into that, but neoliberalism actually created something like a phenomenon of jobless growth. The technology is responsible for that because the elasticity of employment has practically come down world over. So there is jobless growth, there is a privatization, there are tangible efforts about contractual all across.
अच्छा, जॉबलेस ग्रोथ तो ठीक है, यूएसए उतना पैसा छापता है तो जॉबलेस ग्रोथ थोड़ा बहुत होगा ही, मगर उसके अगला वर्ड बोला प्राइवेटाइजेशन। प्राइवेटाइजेशन में नौकरी मिलता है कि नहीं? हाँ, अब तुम बोलोगे नहीं नहीं एआई ने तो मुझे अत्याचार कर दिया, ठीक है, तो भाई रिजर्वेशन कैसे इरोड हो गया न्यू लिबरलिज्म से? एक सेंटेंस का दूसरे सेंटेंस के साथ कोई संबंध ही नहीं है।
The state withdrawing from social sector, all this created all-round crisis. I would say that all these
ऑल राउंड क्राइसिस, अ हैमर ऑलवेज सीज अ नेल। मार्क्सिस्ट है, चारों ओर क्राइसिस ही दिखता है हमेशा।
crisis actually not only is confined to the lowest strata, traditional lowest strata, but the the middle strata also, which had experience in.
Okay, this man has clarified one misconception of mine. Up until today, I used to believe that the main reason people obsess over reservations is that they don't understand caste the way we argue from this channel. Okay, exclusive groups है, hierarchies inevitable है, status groups है, consumption pattern है वगैरह, and वो पूरे दुनिया में था। ये सर वो सब कुछ जान के, सब कुछ में एग्री करके, जिसके साथ लेफ्टिस्ट और राइट विंगर्स दोनों का डिसएग्रीमेंट्स है, वो सब जान के सोल्यूशन सेम दे रहे हैं।
Between during the early years of independence, the prosperity, this middle caste, something like landowning caste, they had local power base with the local self-government institutions, etc., access to state resources that through all these things, they also started experiencing the drain to their power base. Their children took to education, but there are no jobs around. So these people also started becoming unsure about.
No jobs around because तुम neoliberalism को oppose करते हो।
Started demanding reservation. All dominant caste, there is a huge outcry for demanding reservation. They also claiming, that OBC parlance, that we are socially and educationally backward. We also should be included in OBC and even reservation. This twin kind of reaction comes from lower caste because they are also not satisfied. So they want that, certain fellows have usurped all the reservation and kept us excluded. So there should be our share we ought to get. And the subcategorization.
आवर शेयर, ये आवर शेयर थॉमस वेल को एक बार बोल के देखो भाई, मजा आएगा। आवर शेयर का डेफिनेशन पूछो, 10 बुक लिख देंगे एवरीवन विथ ईच बुक ऑफ 800-900 पेजेस, आई गारंटी यू फिर भी आवर शेयर क्या है उसी के कोई क्लैरिफाई नहीं कर पाएगा।
Demand came in. So these are twin kind of reaction to that neoliberal aftermath. So that needs to be understood. Now, what government should do in this situation if it claims to do something about existing inequalities? The answer is very clear. They should actually massively invest into the basic kinds of things which are required.
तो वो ये बहन वो बहन और आरटीई क्या है जो सब इनके अकॉर्डिंग नहीं हुआ है, या फिर वो डजंट इवन सिग्नल एन इंटेंशन ऑफ रिडिस्ट्रीब्यूशन, वो सब गलत है या फिर करेक्ट इंटेंशन से नहीं किया गया, मगर वो जो अचीव करता है वो करना भी एकदम से परफेक्ट है। क्या शुरू से कैसा स्टार्ट था इस इंटरव्यू का और हमारे लाइव स्ट्रीम का, और अब किस दिशा में जा रहे हैं?
For capacity building, and that should be universal based. I argued, for instance, that for even the conventional reservation that what exists today needed that policy to be implemented first, and then only when all the people get empowered, all the people have some basic capacity, then only some select measures of inputting some historically weaker sections with reservation or some.
Oh shit, so his argument is कि भाई तुम जो रिजर्वेशन सेंसस वगैरह कर रहे हो वो फायदेमंद इसलिए नहीं है क्योंकि तुमने बेसिक सब कुछ फ्री में, बेसिक ह्यूमन राइट्स अभी तक सब कुछ फ्री में नहीं दिया है, पहले वो दो, उसके बाद फिर जितना चाहे रिजर्वेशन और कास्ट सेंसस भी करो, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है। अच्छा,
some special benefits, etc. would work. Without that, this would not work. And the history is now testimony to this thing, that reservation, howsoever you do, is not going to work. It has not fulfilled its purpose.
holy shit, yes, the horseshoe then. He's so far leftist that he disagrees with reservations and stuff, and not entirely reservations, I think, but pretty much, and as well as caste census, where we also agree with him, but then his reason is completely different. कि और बहुत कुछ पहले फ्री में देना है, उसके बाद ये सब करना है। वाह वाह,
Now, government should take care of that. So firstly, create that
सरकार को कुछ करना तो चाहिए ही।
kind of base. Secondly, it should have a strong security, social security measure, not giving them ration, free ration for 80 crores, etc.
अब है बोल रहा है और इसके लिए पैसा कौन लाएगा? तो भाई तब तो वो लोग बोलेंगे कि अंबानी अदानी का नेटवर्क देखो, वो देंगे, अंबानी अदानी का सब पैसा हड़प लो, तब ये प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व हो जाएगा। जैसे कि इलॉन मस्क को बार बार बोलते थे ना कि क्या नेटवर्क था, हाँ, तुम्हारा जो एग्जैक्ट नेटवर्क है उससे हम पूरा वर्ल्ड हंगर सॉल्व कर देंगे, ये बार बार रोज बोला जाता था। तो उससे दो काउंटर आर्गुमेंट सामने आए। एक तो इलॉन मस्क ने खुद बोला कि देखो मेरा जो नेटवर्थ है उससे वर्ल्ड हंगर तो सॉल्व नहीं होगा, तुम जो अमाउंट बोल रहे हो उससे ज्यादा पैसा मैंने लास्ट ईयर टैक्स में दे दिया है, वर्ल्ड हंगर काहे सॉल्व नहीं हुआ। दूसरी बात जो इलॉन के सपोर्टर्स ने बोला आफ्टर इलॉन बॉट ट्विटर कि अच्छा देखो ट्विटर हैंडओवर में जितना पैसा लगा वो भी तुम्हारा वर्ल्ड हंगर सॉल्व करने वाला अमाउंट है, तो अब तुम ट्विटर के सब सोशलिस्ट एम्प्लॉइज तुम ये पैसा इकट्ठा करके वर्ल्ड हंगर सॉल्व कर दो, पैसा खा के खुद क्यों ट्विटर के ऑफिस में बैठे हो ब्यूटीफुल कैलिफोर्निया में, जिसका जीडीपी इंडिया से ज्यादा है, क्योंकि वहां पे ऐसे चूतिया पॉलिसीज नहीं है।
But there should be very structured kind of social security measure as it exists in European countries, for that matter. That needs to be done. Third is pay attention to, meaning with all these kinds of data is enough in the country to understand where and what else to actually formulate policies. So that needs to be done. Government should focus on the massive investment into education, healthcare, and livelihood security of people, because without that, even such kind of segment, the select kind of preservation, etc., also are not going to work.
Okay.
Second thing is that they should create a base for public employment. There should be something like proper investment into manufacturing sector, which would really employ multitude of our population, not that service sector, etc. As is emulating America is not going to work in India. Third thing is social security.
अब वो प्रीमेच्योर एमुलेशन वाला पॉइंट भी यही सर दे रहे हैं।
Social security needs to be emphasized. It should be formulated.
वो अमेरिकन नहीं है। सोशल सिक्योरिटी टर्म भी अमेरिकन नहीं है, वो वेस्टर्न स्टाइल कैपिटलिज्म नहीं है, वो एकदम सनातन है, या फिर अम्बेडकर ने बनाया होगा वो टर्म।
Along the lines of what European countries have done, not distributing saris and distributing something like free ration to 80 crores of people. That is wasteful. So such kind of measures will be thought about. There is enough data to understand what it is, but there is absolutely what is lacking is a political will. So everybody is playing politics, and this cost census is not beyond that.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks for watching.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh my God. क्या क्या सोचा था मैंने शुरू में, इतना सोच लिया कि मिडवे जाके बोला कि इज दिस गाय कोऑप्टेड बाय बीजेपी। कहाँ है हमारा डिस्कोर्स और देश? What a disappointment. Every reaction video that we do, I roughly know where it's going to go, right? Either हम सिर्फ क्रिटिसाइज करने को बैठते हैं या फिर देखो कितना बढ़िया बोला ये एनालाइज करने को बैठते हैं। ये पूरा रिवर्स कार्ड खेल दिया हमारे ऊपर। ठीक है, लाइव स्ट्रीम को शॉर्ट रखते हैं। सब लोग हमेशा बोलते हैं शॉर्ट वीडियो करो। विल कम बैक इन हाफ एन आवर और एन आवर विथ Steven Pinker's book. Bye bye guys. Thank you for joining. See you.
যদি সবাই ফিরে যায় ওরে ওরে ও ভাগা সবাই ফিরে যায়, যদি গহন পথে যাওয়ার কালে কেউ ফিরে না যায়, তবে পথের কাটা তুই রক্ত মাখা চরণ তলে একলা দলরে, তুই রক্ত মাখা চরণ তলে একলা দলরে, যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে। যদি আলো না ধরে ওরে ওরে ও ভাগা আলো না ধরে, যদি ঝড় বাদলে আধার রাতে দুয়ার দেয় ঘরে, তবে চলো রে, আপন বুকের পাঁজর চালিয়ে নিয়ে একলা চলো রে। যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে, তবে একলা চলো রে। একলা চলো, একলা চলো, একলা চলো, একলা চলো।